he's moved on. What our conference is capable of doing is electing someone that is ready and willing to lead. And I have full faith and confidence we can do it. We just have to do it. Yes.
And listen, also, from the very beginning, Mike Johnson has had the chance to save us from what happened in October. Look, he is a lame duck. He's not going to get reelected in January. He's not going to lead us to any policy wins. He's not going to cut any spending. He is not even going to try. That is why Hakeem wants him to remain as speaker. So what should he do at this point? He should do what John Boehner did. Do you remember when John Boehner left? He gave us notice, and instead of not having a speaker, we allowed him to remain speaker while we did, as an extracurricular activity, elect another speaker. It wasn't like it was in October when we came in. We had to come in every day of every week, and we all had the same meeting, and we couldn't do subpoenas. We couldn't do investigations. Everything came to a standstill. Johnson alone can save us from that ultimate outcome. If he would step down, but announce that he's stepping down 10 weeks from now and give us time and allow us to still function as a conference. And that's why Marjorie put this bill in the hopper. Right. That's why we've collected co-sponsors, and that's why we're giving him one more weekend to think about it.
If people are going to cast their vote based on this uniparty garbage right here, they're just going to vote for the Democrats. Because like this man said, everyone's saying, what's the difference? There is no difference.
Let me
Carrie.
Okay, just to be sure, I get that you don't want to name names as far as you're thinking about right now, but the fact of the matter is, you have Mike Johnson because Republicans didn't even have a group of names to begin with. So do you have some sort of short list in mind right now? Are you kind of mulling names? Do you have at least a group of people that you're sort of thinking about?
Well, let's be honest. We have Mike Johnson because nobody hated Mike Johnson, okay? There was nothing in his prior life, or political or private, that qualified him for this job.
That did not fund the wall after we had stood at Trump rally after Trump rally and said, build the Washington, D.C. just wants the midterms in 2018. And Nancy Pelosi became speaker. Republicans didn't fight. They allowed the Russia hoax. And then what happened? When Democrats took over the House, it was impeachment number one, and the entire war against President Trump continued. And that war on President Trump is the war on the same voters today that are ready to go and vote for that man in November and put him in the White House in January. And that's exactly what is happening. He's winning poll after poll after poll because he's the only one fighting while Republicans in the House and Republicans in Washington continue to cave and be part of the uniparty. Mitch McConnell has a 6% approval rating for a reason. And that's because he's caved to the Democrats and thrives on building a bigger government. Gave Republicans the House. They gave us the House in 2022. You want to know why? Because they were fed up with the Democrat agenda that is destroying this country. Wide open borders, an economy that's crashing, freedoms being stolen, COVID shutdowns, all the horrors that happened when Joe Biden took the White House and Democrats took full control. That's why we won the House in 2022. But what have we done with it? What are we giving Republican voters to vote for? President Trump is the reason why people are going to turn out in November. And I'm here fighting every single day to push my party to be a Republican-controlled majority that will fight and pass his agenda when he's in the White House in January. And right now, we are not that Republican majority. We have a speaker, Mike Johnson, that by the way, I elected him. I voted for that man. So I have every right to be standing here. It wasn't a choice of America. It was a choice within our Republican conference. And I voted for Mike Johnson because his voting record before he became speaker was conservative. He voted against funding Ukraine. He was solidly pro-life. He voted to secure the border. He voted to fight against Democrats, fight against the witch hunt against President Trump. He has become a man that none of us recognize. He passed 3 continuing resolutions, and then he finally passed a 2-part omnibus that fully funded Joe Biden's agenda and the Democrat agenda, funded the Department of Justice that wants to put President Trump in jail for the rest of his life, which is a death sentence. Mike Johnson fully funded the FBI, which raided Mar-a-Lago, and he gave him a brand new building as a gift. Pro-life Mike Johnson funded full-term abortion clinics, funded the trans agenda on children that 70% of Americans are completely against on both sides of the aisle. Every single foreign war. Americans do not want to send their hard-earned tax dollars to fund the murder and killing in foreign countries. They're fed up with it, and they're screaming it as loud as they possibly can. Our economy should not be built on the blood of wars in foreign countries. That's not what our economy should be built on. That's not how you grow jobs in America. That is horrific. It is evil and it needs to end. But that's what the Uniparty does, and that's what they continue. Mike Johnson fully embraced it, and he funded $61 more billion to Ukraine, funded a war in Israel while he funded Hamas in Gaza. How do you support Israel when you're funding Hamas? And gave more money away while our border stays open. And today, 300 Americans will die from fentanyl. Tomorrow, 300 Americans will die from fentanyl. And the next day, 300 more Americans will die from fentanyl poisoning because there's a war on America led by the cartels in Mexico. And nobody in Washington, D.C. gives a damn and has enough courage to face it. And Americans are sick of it. Sick and tired and fed up. And you want to know something? Nobody wants to rock the boat in Washington, D.C. Oh, no. That would be uncomfortable, Marjorie. We don't want to face the issues, Marjorie. Let's just wait and get through the election, Marjorie. Let's just assume we'll fix it next Congress, Marjorie. Have to die. How many more dead American bodies have to pile up before the House of Representatives that's paid for by Americans' tax dollars actually does something about it? I want to know when this town is going to give a damn about Americans. And that's what this is really about. Well, there's one thing I know. There's one thing I know. If we get President Trump back in the White House in January of 2025, and we are lucky enough to earn the trust again from voters in America to have a Republican majority in this House of Representatives, we have a job to do. We cannot let people down again. We cannot fail President Trump. And this cannot happen. The MAGA agenda that I believe in, the Make America Great Again agenda that I support and Americans support, and the whole reason why Republicans are going to turn out and vote in November because they support President Trump. We need leaders in the House of Representatives that are going to get this done. Not working for Hakeem Jeffries, not working for Joe Biden, and not going to be twisted and lulled into keep continuing the disgusting practices of Washington, D.C. Mike Johnson is not capable of that job. He has proven it over and over again. Now we have Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats coming out, embracing Mike Johnson with a warm hug and a big, wet, sloppy kiss. And they are ready they have endorsed him. They are ready to support him as speaker. They want to keep the band together. Why? And I want to tell you, I think it's good that America witnessed all of that. And the Democrats said his name over and over again. They said Hakeem Jeffries because they wanted to elect him speaker. Well, I find it very satisfying that they are ready to vote for Mike Johnson. And you want to know something? I want to see it happen. And I also want to see recorded votes. I think the American people, by the way, who I represent, I think the American people need to see a recorded vote of does members of Congress support the uniparty? Is this what they support? I think every member of Congress needs to take that vote and let the chips fall where they may. And so next week, I am going to be calling this motion to vacate. Absolutely calling it. I can't wait to see Democrats go out and support a Republican speaker and have to go home to their primaries and have to run for Congress again, having supported a Republican speaker, a Christian conservative. I think that'll play well. I'm excited about it. And I also can't wait to see my Republican conference show their cards and show who we are, because voters deserve it. Is the Republican Party, have they finally learned their lesson? Have they finally heard the message from voters back at home? Are they willing to actually fight, or are they going to just keep going along to get along? Because it's really easy to do that in Washington, D.C. I'm going to tell you, with millions and millions of people invading, suffering, and people fed up with the drama on television and fed up with the fighting and fed up with the bullshit from Washington, D.C., are ready for a Republican majority that's ready to support President Trump and his agenda in January of 2025. And I'm happy to deliver that vote for everyone next week. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to my good friend and ally here, Thomas Massey, and he'll explain his thoughts on this. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to be here today with one of the hardest fighting, most articulate members of our Republican conference. I think she's gone about this in a very reasonable way. She's given the speaker multiple chances to resign, to leave. And instead, he's clinging to power by clinging to Democrats. What are the three betrayals that he's delivered to our party and to the country? Well, the first betrayal was the omnibus bill. You know, under Kevin McCarthy, we did 7 separate spending bills. And then when Mike Johnson took over, did we start working on the other 5? No. We threw the 7 in the trash. All the hard work that we had done, Mike Johnson disposed of and decided to do an omnibus bill. An omnibus bill that spends more than Nancy Pelosi's omnibus bill. An omnibus bill that builds the FBI a brand new building. Meanwhile, we're over here in our Judiciary Committee, asking them for answers. They mock us. They thumb their noses at us. And why shouldn't they? If we're going to build them a new building and send them strongly worded letters as if we're going to do something about their insolence. The second betrayal of Mike Johnson was FISA, passing. Did he do this? But Mike Johnson decided to let the Intel Committee run this program. And then when it came, we fought hard in the Rules Committee. We fought hard in Judiciary. We got a vote on the floor on warrants, whether you should have to have a warrant to spy on Americans. I mean, this is a constitutionally redundant vote. It should be obvious to anybody that's read the Constitution that you need warrants. And you can say, well, poor Mike Johnson, he's got such a slim majority. You can't get everything you want, Marjorie Taylor Greene or Thomas Massey. He's got such a slim majority. He was the slim majority that cast the deciding vote that says you can spy on Americans without a warrant. It was 212 to 212. Go look it up. He didn't vote on the other amendments. He went out of his way to vote no on that amendment and was the deciding vote on FISA without warrants. So what was the third betrayal, the third and final betrayal? Nearly $100 billion for foreign wars. And he just put that on the floor. Hey, it started out as a veterans bill to give veterans better benefits, H.R. 815. Chuck Schumer stripped every word out of it, put this supplemental in it, and send it back to the House. And then using the Rules Committee that I sat on, what I can't go along with, what they did, they pretended like we voted on 4 separate bills. But then after those votes passed, they changed them to amendments and concurred with the Senate bill. And Senate thing was pre-conference with Chuck. They went to the Senate from the House. It's because Mike Johnson was doing Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden's bidding. They didn't need to change a word of any of these bills. Chuck Schumer fought against all the amendments. He wanted those bills exactly as Mike Johnson had passed them, exactly as Mike Johnson had promised. FISA without warrants, an omnibus with a new building for the FBI. and $100 billion of foreign aid with no border security in it. As Ms. Greene stated, our border is wide open. Wide open. This was our last chance for leverage, and the Speaker gave it all up. Now, why would Hakeem Jeffries endorse a Republican Speaker? Aren't they arch rivals? I mean, what does Hakeem Jeffries want, after all? He wants an open border. He wants increased spending. He wants to take back the majority. And most of all, he and the Democrat conference here want President Trump to lose. Who do they think can deliver on all four of those things? Mike Johnson will deliver these things for them. Increased spending, open borders, a loss of our majority, and a loss for President Trump. Because this is so demotivating here. We sat here and watched total capitulation with the Democrats waving flags that was premeditated of another country, not the American flag. You know, Mike Johnson should have brought the white flag and waved it in front of us. Because it was a complete capitulation. It was a humiliation, and it will be too many of our colleagues have thrown up their hands in frustration and apathy. Oh, we shouldn't even try. Let's just coast this one out. I tell you what, it's too dangerous to coast this one out. We cannot coast this one out. Hakeem Jeffries knows if we coast this one out, we lose the majority. Spending goes up next fall. He knows the border will stay open. And he knows this is going to demotivate our voters because if we've given up, why should they try? So we are not going to give up. We will fight the uniparty, and we will have this vote next week, and I look forward to it. And I've got one last challenge. I challenge members of my own conference to think long and hard about whether they want to join the uniparty next week. But we have a leadership team, a team of leaders, from conference chair to whip to majority leader. Why do we have a team? We have a team so that when one of them goes off the rails, the others of them can meet with them and say, you are no longer suited for this job. So I challenge the whip, the majority leader, the conference chair, the policy chair, everybody in our conference to sit down with Mike Johnson and have that talk and tell him, it's not worth it, Mike. It's not worth it to share power with Hakeem Jeffries just for the vanity of you keeping the title of Speaker. It doesn't serve our country. They need to ask him to resign. I challenge them to have that tough discussion. With that, we'll take questions.
If this vote fails next week, as is expected, will you continue to try to force a vote on this issue? And two, former President Trump has said positive things about the Speaker and has said he doesn't favor a motion to vacate. Aren't you defying former president's wishes?
Absolutely not. I'm the biggest supporter of President Trump, and that's why I proudly wear this MAGA hat. I fight for his agenda every single day, and that's why I'm fighting here against my own Republican conference to fight harder against the Democrats. Mike Johnson has fully funded the Department of Justice that wants to put President Trump in jail, giving him a death sentence. He fully funded the FBI that raided Mar-a-Lago and gave them a brand new building. He fully funded Biden's wide open border. I know everybody knows, the American people know, and every voter that's ready to line up and vote for President Trump in November knows between me and Mike Johnson who's supporting President Trump and his agenda, and that is absolutely me, number one. If this vote fails and the whole conference, the whole Congress supports the uniparty, let me tell you something. That is not a failure. It's a win for the American people because that's a list of names. And the voters and the American people who pay for everywhere, we're standing on ground they pay for. They pay for that building. They deserve that list. I believe in recorded votes. That is our job. Our job is to vote. And if anyone is scared of where they're going to vote on a motion to table or if it goes further, then they don't belong here in Washington.